Rise for pledge allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This first order of business. Well, I have two requests for a couple people to speak. We need to do the minutes first.
Yes.
All right, so we'll approve the minutes first.
I will move to approve them as written.
Okay. Motion moved by Bob, seconded by Don. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
3-0. So I had a request, a couple of people wish to speak. Rhonda being one. So
I'm here today to ask that you go ahead and interview the applicants we have for the Economic Development Director position. The last time we had applicants, we lost them because we waited. So I'd like to go ahead and have permission to interview them, or have them come in for you to interview.
then we'll discuss this further at roundtable. That'd be all right. So I'll get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And you,
Yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know that yesterday we set up polling locations for Burlington and New Strawn, and we still have a little bit more to set up because of COVID-19. There's a lot of protective equipment we're putting up, so I'll be out today, so I won't be here during the meeting because we'll be setting up the rest of the polling locations. So if you need anything, I can come back later, or
looks like a pretty short agenda, so
so I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
thank you. Moving forward then, zoning and subdivision administrator, Patty Harris. We need to,
Donna Berlin is doing the checklist.
pardon me,
Donna Berlin is doing the checklist for us. She's doing the checklist for you guys, so, just another minute or two before we start. The
I'm having a
commission
hard time hearing
checklist,
you.
I don't have the commission checklist down here for you guys yet. Donna Berlin went to go print it.
Oh,
Can we
okay,
wait?
okay. Checklist, I remember seeing one, I thought I read the thing pretty thorough.
We need to move into a hearing for the zoning board. So we need to recess our meeting until the zoning board hearing to do this.
So we recess the Board of County Commissioners and enter into zoning board, correct?
Coffee ball.
We need to make a motion for that?
Put that motion.
No, you just need to call it when we get to it.
Recesses commission and go to the zoning board.
Bob, don't you need, you're not recessing as a commission, you're basically entering into a public hearing.
We're just entering into a public, yeah, the
Okay.
hearing. The hearing.
Entering into a public hearing for case such and such. And that would be it.
We gotta get it.
Your checklist would actually tell you that. The
Okay.
checklist would actually say the
All right.
page one at the bottom. Page one. Start here, okay?
Okay. When you call an agenda item, I call agenda item case number 2020-02. Public hearing. For temporary storage of vehicles in a fenced area. This is special use in C2 interchange commercial. Before we proceed with the hearing, I'll ask the governing body members if they have any of them intend to disqualify themselves from participating in this case because they or their relatives own property in the official notification area, or they have a conflict of interest or a particular bias in this matter.
No.
No. Does the minutes show nobody has removed themselves? So I declare we have a quorum of 3 present for consideration of this case. Has the county clerk received any protest petitions?
No.
Do they come? No. So I ask the governing body members if they have received copies of the unapproved minutes of the planning board for July 15, 2020.
Yes.
Which summarizes the hearing. Having determined that the members have received the minutes of the planning board meeting, we will proceed with the case. The governing body will first hear from the zoning administrator, and the applicant and members of the public will be asked if there is any new information on this case. Commission members may choose to ask questions to the zoning administrator, the applicant, county staff, and the public. I call on the zoning administrator, Heidi Harris, to provide us with a report on the case and recommendations of the planning board.
Okay, I'm gonna go into the booklet that you guys have in front of you. So I'll just go into the report page, just to give you a little background on it. The case application and legal restrictions were filed on March 19th due to COVID-19. The application had to be received on May 8th of 2020. The official notice and those property owners were sent out on May 21st, and then they tabled it in June 17th for additional information. The address is 2738 Links Place, Legal, Kansas 66856. It's about a 2.8 acre tract. The next portion in the report shows the the ag area, so it shows what's out there currently. We just need to go over what the board had discussed going up there. It's out there. Would you like me to go over the map?
I acquainted myself with it. I don't know about you.
It's a veto, correct?
Veto area, yes.
We're good.
Okay. Then under correspondence, there's the pictures showing what's currently out there on the site as of June 2nd, which is before the first hearing. About the 5th picture in would be what was currently right out there before the last hearing, which is in July. And the notices, and then of course the maps they looked at in the maps tab. The contour map, that's the area of notification map. The landowner list and who was notified. And the last one is the application of what they're applying for. Shows their legal description of the property. And then the last map then it shows their proposed design of how they're gonna lay out this area. The board did recommend this case for approval. They only placed 2 conditions on it, but upon reviewing the zoning regulations, I would like to recommend a 3rd condition be placed on the case. The reason why there's 3rd condition is, according to the zoning regulations, that properties have to have access off of their property. This property currently is landlocked up at Vito Junction. It doesn't have access to Highway 75 or the 27th Place. The access is either off of Jason's dad, Doyle Harsh's property, which is to the south, or to the north of the property, which is that gas station. So that's the only access to the property. So the following condition is what I would propose that you guys would place on the resolution as well, would be have a dedicated access through an easement agreement to the tract of land as described from the adjoining landowner.
Did you bring this up in the zoning board?
We did discuss it, yes, and the board felt at that time that it was not needed, but upon reviewing regulations, it is a requirement for the zoning regulations.
So you're recommending that?
I'm recommending this 3rd condition be added to the resolution. for they're recommending approval, and I'm wanting to add this one to the approval.
So have you talked to them? Is that gonna be a problem for them?
I have talked to the Leba Garage. We're still in discussion about it. When she gets a turn to speak, if you'd like to ask her that question, you can. But we've been working on that.
Where are you proposing the entry to be? I'm having a very, I'm only hearing about half what you're saying. And I got my hearing aids pumped up.
Sorry. So what would need to be done is an access of easement would have to happen. So either the easement would be on his dad's property, Doyle Harsh's property, or the easement would have to be granted from the landowner that owns the gas station to the north. It's whichever one they can get an agreement to for that access easement. I'm not gonna limit them to say that they have to do it with his dad. I'm not gonna limit them to say they have to do it with the gas station. But one of those property owners has to agree for Doyle to have access to this property through that access easement.
Okay, well, you kind of thrown me now. I thought this property was adjacent to the existing property that Jason has.
Jason, that's the only property Jason,
That's Jason, where the record service is, right?
yes.
And so maybe I misunderstand. So what's the zoning for then? Because that's already zoned, correct?
There's the number of vehicles
Uh-huh.
is the issue. And that's why it had to be. The zoning states that if you have 10 or more junk vehicles on your property, that was the issue that brought this in front of the board to begin with for this site.
Okay.
Well, they cannot access that from the south there?
They don't have in the deed, in his deed, he doesn't have a easement access easement in the deed for Jason. It just states that Jason owns that box right there, and that's all Jason owns. He doesn't have an easement to be able to go from his dad's property or from the gas station's property to get to that property. They're just allowing him to do it right now.
I see. Okay, I'm with you 100% now.
Because of time frame, it doesn't go back and regress where he can still use that and come from the north also. Because, it's been there for how many years and years. So it doesn't say that after 7, 8 years, whatever it might be, that is an easement. Okay, I'm shaking his head now. Okay.
No, on that one, Bob, is if you went through the legal side of it, you would still have to go through and have a hearing with a judge to make a determination if you have easement or not. Obviously, they were accessing both ways. They're accessing to the north and they're accessing to the south. But at this point, the application for the special use, which gives the legal description, does not convey any access to that tract. So what you have is you have a tract that is basically landlocked, and there is no legal or easement available to basically describe that tract to allow a permit to go through. And that's what you're dealing with today.
So what if we've handled this before, no one wants to give an access, we can make an access.
There are things
We have
that
done that.
people, yes, in the laws, there are things that basically people cannot be landlocked.
Right.
You can go through and force them to have access. But with this too, you're going to find through the hearing, the applicant also, that is his father. His father plans on conveying the property to him at some point. But as you're hearing the case today, he still has no access. Yes, that property will be conveyed to him at some point, as we understand it through these discussions. But as you're still approving the special use in the zoning, it requires access to a property. And so to comply with the zoning regs, you'd have to have
Okay,
access.
so he doesn't have access today, but you're asking that we approve this with the restrictions he has access.
It's a condition that he's to have access.
But we're gonna give him time to gain this access.
Yes.
We're
Yes,
not
sir.
gonna
Special use, validity is 180 days.
180 days to get it.
Yes.
If he doesn't, then he will have to come back and kind of start the process over.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
That's what that
we're
was
clear.
referring to, that 180 days to October 13th.
Well, the 180
That's what that
days,
was referring to.
that's,
It would be today if we prove it, right?
it would be the effectuating resolutions date of publication. So that'd be Thursday if you guys approved it today. So it'd be
Okay, so
Thursday's date,
it really hasn't started before now.
correct?
Okay,
And once again, the discussion that we've had with the landowner is all they would need would be an easement description from, as I understand it, the dad to convey that they're gonna have access on the property. I mean, that's all it amounts to. It's a document that would be able to be placed in the file to show consistency with our zoning regulations.
Somewhat of a minor technicality.
Yes.
You know, it may be a minor deal, but to me, something like that should be already approved and worked out before we get final approval.
That's where the condition can fall in on that one, Don, is because it's not worked out at this point. Then by putting that condition in, it gives that 180 days to give a little bit of time to work that one out.
And for the applicant, that's acceptable.
They would be able to visit, but as I understand,
I can see how this happened. His dad owned all this to start out with.
yes, sir.
I mean, I can understand, and then Jason took over the business and where they gave the business to him, and probably never even crossed their mind is because this is the way it is, so.
Absolutely.
So I'm okay, let me clarify this again. With your recommendation also, any other two, you would say that you'd like for us to approve this today, and they have 180 days to get it worked out. If they don't get it worked out in 180 days, then they got, something else got to happen.
And within that 180 days, there was an extension period as well.
Right, if they're
Yes.
processed and stuff, I understand, okay, I'm okay.
But you have an opportunity to visit with the applicant too on this.
Thank Heidi for her presentation. Does anybody else have any more questions? So, now are there any written communications or petitions from the public? No. Okay, I think our applicant's here, is that correct? You want to present any new information?
Jason has talked to Dad, and so Dad's just gonna
Would
sign
you like
that.
to come up here, please?
Oh, I got a sore back. I
Okay.
have
All right,
issues.
I get it, okay.
But Dad is going to just sign the property over to Jason. It's just being just last week, it's not something they've got done, so that'd just be easy. It's either gonna sign it over or put his name on the deed, so
Okay,
it's just a matter of time.
all right.
And, okay, maybe I asked, that, his name goes on the deed is acceptable then, because it's no longer landlocked for him.
He owns the property, he
He
can
owns
drive
the
on his own
property.
property.
Okay,
Yes, that'd be correct.
that's fine.
So, is that all we have?
Yes.
Anybody got any more questions for the applicant?
They mentioned putting a solid fence. Is that gonna be a chain link fence? And plastic down through it to be solid, or what type of a solid fence are they planning on putting that?
You guys went through a few different things last time, so we were waiting
I
for.
can't remember.
That material for the fence has not been established yet.
Yes, that is correct.
The material for the fence has not been established yet.
Was a solid bench one of the requirements.
Yes, that was
Yes.
one of the
So, okay,
conditions.
so, but they just have to meet all those requirements within a certain time.
Any other questions? Does anyone from the public wish to respond to the applicant's information or provide new information on this case? Not otherwise presented at the hearing that should be brought to the attention of the governing body. Well, I'll move on now. So does the applicant have any other further responses? That would be no, because we have no public response, so. Assuming the governing body has received all the information they need on this case, we will outline the choices provided under the state statute of the governing body action. Each case will be separately.
Mr. Chairman, I will approve the application with the Heidi's recommendations and requirements added to it.
And Bob has moved.
Do we need to read these 6 different issues off?
You don't have to read them off, no.
I was told last time, when I was chairman, I had to read them all.
That would be up to you guys as the board if you guys wanted them all read off or
Okay.
not. It's just your guys' option on that.
Okay. Also second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Bob moved. Don second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. By majority vote, return the recommendation to the planning board on case number 2020-02.
No.
You're under closing remarks now.
Pardon me?
You're under closing remarks now.
Mark.
So, a final decision of the governing body on this matter at 30 days after the affecting resolution is published, within to appeal to the district court. We want to thank all participating at this hearing and welcome to stay for the remainder of our meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's 2 copies that we need to sign.
Hey, Tom. There's an addition, I haven't got a chance to tell you yet, there's an addition to the agenda. Sheriff Rogers would like to be added at 10 o'clock for policy clarification.
Clarification. 10 minutes, 15 minutes most.
So I just put it on this agenda.
Okay.
You need to, on the last, call for agenda item number 3, get us back into our meeting.
Agenda item number 3.
Yes.
For agenda item number 3, you can be back on track for
That
every
gets back into our meeting.
Senate. So with that, we have Connie.
Morning.
Aye.
I would just like to request to fill a position that is vacated right now. When Faye and Marilyn retired, I made that position into one, and Heather's moved into that position, so now I need to fill Heather's position.
So we have a motion here on the recommendation of the county appraiser, move to approve the request for authorization to advertise and hire 1 full-time personal property specialist. No new position is being added. This request will fill a current position within the department due to a vacancy.
I would actually like for this motion to state that this new position will take care of 2 positions.
That's the other one that I already filled. This is.
Oh, okay.
This is Heather's position that she has moved into the other.
I will move.
I'll second.
Move. Bob or Don seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed 3-0. Good luck. With that, we have Leonard.
Morning, Larry.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi, Leonard.
So, thank you for seeing me this morning. I just want to take a few minutes. By now, most of you know that I decided not to sign the new contract that was extended to me by the board, which I greatly appreciated, by the way. I have accepted the president CEO position for Susan B. Allen Memorial Hospital in El Dorado. I'll start those duties September 30th. So I'm still here for about 45 more days. And we'll continue to do the things that we've been doing the last 5 years over that time. But I want to take a couple minutes this morning to thank you as commissioners for the support for Coffee Health System over the last 5 years. I don't think I've been to a local, state, or national meeting where I haven't talked about the support that this group gave to Coffee Health System during my time there, and has allowed us to rebound and do some good things that we think we're in place now that will help you in the years to come. The hospital that I'm going to is kind of in a scenario like we were when I came here. They have some issues that they need to fix, and you know, when we talked about things, actually back in September, I said no, but after we talked again, I decided that was, well, I shouldn't say I decided, I should say Joni and I decided that was the best option for us at this point. So I did just want to come to do that. I also know I don't think I come here very often and don't lobby for something, so I didn't think I could come to my last meeting here with you guys and not lobby a little bit. So I know that James and the executive team and some of the other leadership team has put together quite a list of equipment for the state money for COVID-19. I know you have a committee that's formed that's going to review all that, and then finally it will come to you guys for approval. At least that's the way I understand it. But I just want you to know that I took a look at this over the weekend, and I took a good look. And there are some good items in there that will continue the COVID process and for the future in a lot of different other ways. So I would just ask that when those things do come to you, that you take a good look at them. And I know they spend a lot of time getting pricing and doing all that kind of stuff because they really are committed to, you know, seeing how much of that stuff they can get done, which would be a great help to them. As we talked last time, I think about capital projects and capital equipment. And so that would be a good step for the county to look at. And I hope everybody gets a chance to see all that list. And then finally, I think this is going to be my shortest meeting with you guys, but the election is tomorrow, and I just want to take a moment to tell everyone that I want to wish them good luck in tomorrow's election. I know it's been a long campaign and a long series of things going on, but you know, you have some good people here in Coffee County, and you have people that are, you know, maybe wanting to step up and do some things, but you have quite a nucleus here right now. And I would just say that I just wanted to say good luck to everyone. No matter what happens, you're going to have a good crew, and I know that you guys will continue, at least I hope you will continue to work with Coffee Health System. And I just want to say one final thing, I guess, and that is Joni and I don't wish anything but the best for Coffee County. We have enjoyed our time here immensely. We've met some great people. You know, I think we have one of the best staffs that I've ever worked with, and I know that they're going to be committed to continuing to align with the things that we've put in place. So, and I know the board is also very strong, and they will stay committed also. So, with that, I just want to say thank you, and I want to say goodbye. I wasn't sure if I get a chance to do that, so I do appreciate you guys giving me a couple minutes to say that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And I'd just like to say that I appreciate what you and your board have done for the last 5 years, because 5 years ago, I was really concerned about our hospital. And I think you've done a fantastic job, and you've been a good leader, so thank you very much.
Thank you, boss. Appreciate it.
Wish you luck.
Thank you.
Wish you very much luck. Fantastic 5 years here, the hospital back where it needs to be, and without your leadership, I'm not sure that would have happened.
I appreciate that.
But thanks for what you've done for Coffee County, and best of luck in the years ahead, Leonard.
Thank you so much.
And you do know that Mark's not here today because you're taking Joni and he's home with tears in his eyes.
Well, I can't say I haven't had a few tears, but I got to tell you, this was a tough decision. But I know they're strong enough to do it, or I wouldn't have left. So Thank you all
Thank you.
again.
Good luck.
Good luck, Tony.
Thank you.
Let me shake hands. God bless you. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Well, Wayne, we're running a little bit.
I'll be right.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, just to jump right in, we had one road permit on the engineer's report, but just go ahead and strike that. The road permit did not develop at the end of the week, and so possibly here next week, it'll come up and we can visit about it. Zoning, as you've had the hearing, once again, Heidi does an excellent job. Zoning has evolved over the last several years. It is a very difficult position. That book is that thick of mostly laws and the statutes. And so finding all of the things that need to be done to protect the citizens of the county, and then also the commission to continue to move forward with the statutes and the laws that's provided in zoning. It is a very important job. And so she does an excellent job. And there's a lot of things to know. So I appreciate her work onto it. It has helped me tremendously in that department with her dedication to that position. The other one would be just jump right into construction zone and things that we're doing this week. So here's construction zone. As last week, we had several days of rain, so it slowed us down on quite a few projects. It also allowed us some opportunities to do some repairs on some equipment as well. And so with this week, we're seeing some favorable weather and some favorable activities that's going on. As you can see there, bridge crews doing several things, but one of the things to highlight is some of the work on the overpass. This is on the west side of the overpass. What we have is an inlet there on the south side that has been, over the last couple of years, has been settling, and we've had to replace the pipe. The pipe actually had rusted in two, and a section of the pipe was actually washed away. And so we're taking the opportunity with that bridge being closed to go in and do that work. We also had a curb and gutter section that's being replaced, and then also some guardrail too. So doing a little work on that. Bridge crew has several other projects working on. Assistant fleet is continuing with the landfill. The floor is pretty much done. What we're doing this week is actually pushing up the slopes. So we'll have a better idea where we're going to be at by Thursday, but the material is setting on the ground. You possibly will see a special issue check here next week to pay for material on hand, and that would be for the landfill. So hopefully within the next week or two, and depends on their schedule, would be to put the liner down and start finishing it up. Scrub seal, chips, and we're doing our chip seal and also our scrub seal. So we have a location where we're doing our scrub seal right now. It's on between 12th and 16th. We're using the A1C, and so the AIC. And we're using, basically, it's a different type of chip. We practiced with it on a section there on the parking lot at the road and bridge. And I think we're going to find basically it to be very successful in our chip seal operation. But keeping in mind, scrub seal is we'll put the scrub seal down, we'll put the chip seal over the top of it, then we'll put the fog seal over the top of that. That's how we do it at this time. But scrub seal is really an application that's used on asphalt that has a tremendous amount of cracking, cracking beyond what a normal crack seal would basically entail. And so this way we're able to fill those cracks with this scrub seal and then continue on our chip sealing operation.
Are the chips smaller, or what's the difference with the chips?
The chips are more uniform and they are smaller. That is correct. The other side of scrub seal is what you use a sand. What you're trying to achieve more than anything else, it's not the rock, the aggregate. that's important in the scrub seal. What's important in the scrub seal is the oil and the brooms that push the oil down into the cracks. That's what's important. The chips itself is really for skid resistance. And so now you're developing a surface that won't be as slick for the traveling public. So that's a reason for that. So we do have that. We had a couple accidents also, and so as per policy to follow up with damage, and those are 2 of them. I'll read them for you, and that way you'll have them of record, as of record. So report to the county commission as per policy 14.6, accident and damage report exceeding $1,000 to a privately owned equipment at or near location within the county right-of-way, being the east side of Trefoil Road between 21st and 22nd Road. The county employee was operating the mowing tractor with bush hog mowing back substantial vegetation as assigned to make clear county right-of-way during the operation. 2 phone pedestals were damaged and reported to the county sheriff by the phone company. No damage was reported to the mower or bush hog. As per policy, a drug test was conducted for the county employee operating the mowing tractor. There was no problems there. The vegetation, we went out and investigated. Jeff had a great idea. Let's just go out and take a look at it and see what we had. Now, a person would ask, well, why are you mowing back? All right, well, our policy is actually mow back in the fall, but the last couple of years, we have not been able to mow back. That's been our problem, is it's always been either too wet or was not able to get to it, and other activities took us away from being able to mow back. This section on Trefoil, if you're familiar with it, is actually vegetation was growing up in a way that if we continued to allow that, we'd have bigger problems, problems that we've not been able to mow back. The telephone pedestals, person says, well, why can't you see a telephone pedestal? Well, we asked the same question, but when you start looking at the county right-of-way and you start looking at these telephone pedestals, you'll see some of them marked, some of them not marked, some of them have posts that basically show a buried line, but no telephone pedestal. And so various degrees of basically lack of uniformity is part of it. The other side is vegetation has actually outgrown the height of the telephone pedestal. And so it's not to excuse our work, but it's also to say, okay, what can we make better and what are the conditions that we're working in? And so one of the things that we're making better is when we come into these high vegetated areas such as that, is basically go out and explore the area as much as we possibly can. If that means walking it, that means walking it. Doing what we can. If we see a post, go out there and investigate it. Also, too, we're going to reach out to the phone company and see if we can find their maps. We haven't done this before, but there's so many pedestals, and especially if you look on Trefoil, it seems like there's a pedestal every couple hundred feet, every 500 feet. But we're going to try to find maps, too, to identify where these possibly could be at. But they were hit, they were damaged. We're going to see a report or a claim on at least one of those pedestals.
Could we not work with phone companies to them? And I know it's going to take a few posts, but could we not drive steel posts beside the pedestals that are going to be up high enough and paint the tops of them every color you want so that they're obvious? And maybe the phone company works with them and they put a new pedestal in, maybe they could put a post in for us.
That's what we need to do. That's going to be part of this communication, that one, to see what their maps are, and two, to start identifying these pedestals as much as we possibly can, and place something up there that would be above the vegetation height.
And probably not only phone company, probably got some water district things occasionally too, and maybe fiber optic or some other things somewhere occasionally. So, I mean, it's going to cost a few steel posts, but steel posts are pretty cheap. We can buy a lot of steel posts for the price of this.
I would agree. I would agree.
I'm surprised you haven't looked a lot more of them.
We tend to every.
They're around Leroy, those telephones, where there's not a wooden post. Someone's got a wooden post by.
Mm-hmm.
But you take a pedestal out there that tall. They're all covered up now.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be good if you had some documents from the companies to show you where those pedestals are at. Because I'm sure they got documents that pinpoint them.
That's what we thought as well. The 800 dig safe, that's for underground stuff. We really can't call them for the above ground. But it is going to be reaching out to them individually and then see what they would do to, as far as working with us. There's quite a bit in the ground, but you got to start somewhere. And so that's where we're at. Also see too is when we're mowing around them, we're giving them a wider berth. We're basically mowing further away from them because of the problems. So now when you look at that, you're also saying, okay, now you're gonna have all this vegetation, and we're seeing some trees right now actually are growing up near the power poles and such as that. And this is just large clump of vegetation around these poles, either power poles or telephone risers. And I wouldn't think that you'd wanna have that to be acceptable either. You're also gonna have, I mean, the landowner for the most part, where we don't have the utilities, if they have fence, for the most part, we're able to continue to clear that right of way. But where we have the utilities, we can't get close enough to clear it. And so you're gonna continue to have that high vegetation. And I cannot see it to be very practical for us to go out and 1,200 miles of county roads and clear all the vegetation around utility poles and phone pedestals. But it does not take away our responsibility. We still have a responsibility to make safe our work area. And so those are the things that we are implementing, continuing to implement, and continue to advise our folks to take precautions, not only for themselves, but for the equipment and also for personal property, which is like the telephone pedestals. So we have looked at this. We have found, I think we have something that we're continuing on to make better. Hopefully we would have 0 on these, but we're going to do our best. The next one that we have is a report. County Commission as per policy 14.6, accidents and damage report exceeding $1,500. 2 county light duty trucks, T31 and T90. The accident location was near 11.5 and Emmer Road during the chip seal operations. The county employee driving T31 accelerated into the bumper of T90. No county employee was injured at the time of the accident. The county employee driving T31 was drug tested as per county policy.
Is there anyone in T90?
No.
Okay.
At this point, yes. Once again, I don't accept necessarily accidents. I don't care for the word. We can always try to prevent things from happening. And so we're looking at it that way. The discussions that we had is we're looking at it to be more safe. And so that's where we're at. The other one, we weren't even there. And so this is a 3 of them. Is we have a county dump truck that was at the county fair, and I was not even aware of our truck being hit, but actually somebody had backed up into the county dump truck. It did not damage the dump truck, but the insurance company had contacted the office. I visited with them, and they were asking if there was any damage. There was no damage to the truck. There was no employee at the truck, in the truck, near. And so I'm just letting you know. So there won't be anything that would come from that. To finish up construction zone would be to talk about the 6 bridges and then also the asphalt operations. So the 6 bridges right now, they're on the overpass on Old Highway 50. If the weather is favorable, it's possible that they may be finished this week. But I'm seeing more likely next week with the Old Highway 50. They had salt cut and chipped out all of the problem areas on the concrete deck. There was only 1 or 2 small areas that actually punched through for full depth repair. And so we were a little bit surprised on that. So we have less than what we were expecting. So that work will be, as I say, completed towards the end of this week, possibly next week. And as I said earlier, is we're making use of the road closure to do the repairs on the west side. We are still investigating Emmer Road, and so what we have is we have surveyed that section from both 100 feet both ways of the entrances of the bridge, And so we have profiled over that. We had 5 lines of profiles that we conducted. And just for information, the existing bridge actually has 2 areas that are what we call a sag. A sag would be a low area in the bridge deck. And so one of the sags was actually 1.5 inches. It had 1.5 inches sagging to it. So when you're going over that bridge, what you were doing is you would sink down and then come back up, sink down, come back up. There was at least 2 sections. Now, there's 2 reasons for putting asphalt on these bridges, and that's what was on that bridge. It was well over 2 inches of hot mix asphalt onto it. One of them is to cover damage, surface damage that you would find on the bridge, and the other is the rideability, what you're looking at.
So we're saying that bridge, that sag that you're calling was in that bridge to begin with?
Yes,
That's
sir.
why the asphalt was put over it.
Yes, sir.
So our question is, or my question is, when we discover things like that, can they not do, including with their patchwork? You know, I know it'd be a change order to correct that with concrete or their patch material, as opposed to having to come back and put asphalt in.
That's what we're working on right now.
Okay.
And so we're working with the manufacturer, also KDOT's involved too, the material, their head material guy. And so we're working with them, and we're gonna see how much of that we can take out. We may not get the whole 1.5 inches, but if we can take maybe half of it out, I don't believe you'll feel as much of it.
I know we did change orders for something, you know.
On the approaches,
Yeah. So,
yes. And that one's moving forward. There was some issue that I believe I had spoke about or visited about, is the hot mix was so hot, and we actually had tracks onto it and different things like that. But it was a change order less than, I think, it was around $6,000, less than $7,000 for the change order. But we do have that. There is a concern as far as the warranty on the approaches, to make sure we don't get wheel rutting later, as soft as it was, just to make sure that we had some compaction. I was waiting to get an estimate on doing some cores onto it, but I don't have that number right now to visit with you, but I'm looking at a change order for, like I say, just under $7,000 for that asphalt. Where do you come in and say, I need to continue to test something that's under $7,000? Or come in and say, you're gonna warranty it for a period of time? Okay, that's where we're at.
The track's deep enough to affect rideability, or are they just?
On those particular ones, the tracks, no, was more of a cosmetic issue, but what it said to me more than anything was, when we were out there and doing the surveying onto it, is the legs of our level, which is not that heavy, but they are pointed. They actually sunk down in the asphalt. That's a concern. I'm saying that at that point, 2 days later after the asphalt's laid, it should have been cured. We shouldn't have had legs sinking in the asphalt.
Was it a faulty asphalt?
That's the thing, is do we test it to the point that we say $7,000 of liability, or do we say, okay, there's going to be a level of warranty onto it? I hate to make those claims, because unless you do the testing, you just really don't know. But we had questions onto it. We just had questions on the compactability of those approaches. But overall, and we also had done some cleanup work afterwards on that too. We've done a lot on all 6 of these bridges to try to get them open and try to work back and forth. It was not covered in the plans or the specifications, but trying to do the best that we can and serve the public. So we have done, I feel, more than what would have been normally expected. But we didn't just do one bridge. We did 6 of them at once, trying to minimize basically the inconvenience of doing one every year, closing it down for a period of time, but actually trying to do these. And they're ahead of schedule by doing all 6 as well. So they mobilized and did all 6, or working on all 6. Actually, by doing so, they're ahead of schedule. So, and we're also finding our quantities to not. So, and keep in mind that all of these 6 bridges had exposed rebar. It wasn't just concrete falling out, it was exposed rebar of concrete falling out. And so, as Mahoney was saying, or Moni was saying from BG Consultants, is if you just allow that to continue to degrade, then what you'd find yourself is actually replacing these bridges. And for 6 bridges for just over $1 million, I think Moni was saying, what, 8 million, something like that, or in that nature, to try to replace these type of bridges. So we are extending the service life of these bridges, but we're not making the bridge brand new. Okay, that wasn't the idea. The idea was to extend the service life of them. And also too, these were selected on asphalt roads that we do a lot of salting on our asphalt roads. So we're part of that as well, to try to maintain traffic safety to the citizens, is to salt the roads, and salt and bridges do not mix very well with the steel rebar. And so we're making things better. I know it's not as smooth as we would like in some areas, but we're doing what we can, and we are extending the service life. So in essence, we're improving the safety and then the quality of material, which is the bridges themselves in the county. And I understand that I need to try to make this rideability, because that's what the people want to. So that's the reason why we're going the extra effort there on Emmer to try to improve that. And there will be a change order onto it.
There seemed to be a tendency in the past before you and I, that this quarter of the county had a lot of bridges with dips in the middle. Because we have replaced some of those with others. It seemed like that was a tendency down in that area.
And I know that I ran into that on the Audubon, those 2 bridges there, because I put asphalt. That was one of the first things I had done, because we had a roller coaster on one of those bridges. And Tom knows that if they had done a reverse camber onto it from the original design, that is some of the reasons why you would have had basically sags that develop in the bridge deck, is they didn't do it according to the engineer's recommendation for the profile across the bridge deck. That happens. The other side, what happens too, and maybe I'm explaining too much or taking too much time, but you also got to keep in mind the rebar in that bridge deck is to keep the concrete in place in its tension loads, okay? In compression loads, concrete's fine without rebar, but in its tension loads, concrete is not. When we're running these heavier trucks, Bob, when we're talking about bridges that are 50 years old, they weren't designed for the heavier trucks that we see today. And so some of this too, and I'm just reaching out there, some of this as well is that our concrete has small micro fractures into the concrete. So now our bridge deck is actually being held up by that rebar. That rebar is designed to actually elongate, all right? So then what happens, think about it this way, if you've had heavy loads going across there, that bridge deck is sagging a little bit. It's because it's holding up its design, but also too, it's something that we need to take a look at as far as replacement. And I appreciate the budget hearing that we're going to have, and I appreciate the funds that we're going to have in special bridge, because that's going to allow me at least 2 bridges that we've talked about before down in the Gridley area to replace at once. And that way we can minimize basically our cost for contractors' mobilization. And those would be those 2 bridges down there on county roads, the gravel roads.
And one of those is that way.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And so, but we have that. But overall, our bridges in fairly good shape. We have, once again, we have less than, I believe, 1 that's even below a 50 sufficiency rating. And so that leads me into the discussion to say that when they have a call out for bridges, and which they do, we have a call out here for next month for bridges. I have not been able to receive funds. Every year I've done this, I've basically put out there. Now there's been a couple that we have received, but if you're less than a 50, you're more likely to get it, but we're not less than a 50 on majority of our bridges. So our money is going to come from what we have saved up. It's not going to be coming from the state as much, okay? I'm just putting that out there as we need to save our money to be able to replace our bridges, because we're not going to be getting the money from the state and the federal money, because our sufficiency ratings are not that low. But we will continue to get bridges that's gonna require load postings. Okay? Why? Is because they're posting these bridges with trucks that do not exist down here necessarily. These are those 6-axle trucks, single trucks that have all these multiple axles, 4 or 5 axles underneath that bed. We have up in Kansas City, you can see them up in Kansas City, but you don't see them down here. We're gonna have all of our bridges that are being basically tested now, for the most part, we're gonna have load ratings on them. Does that change anything? Well, everything will be posted. That's what it's gonna change, more than anything else. Okay, that's all I have. So I appreciate the time to visit. So unless you have any questions for me. All right, thank you, Dwayne.
And short break.
That bridge over there on Emerald acts like it's got more than an inch and a half of dip in it. I drove it the other day.
Well, no, you just.
Graduated to a new seat.
Yeah, we moved you down. Yes. It's vacant today, so. Or this is, it's actually empty. Thanks.
Morning, Wade, how you doing?
Good.
Morning. I just messed this.
Oh, much bread. Okay. Bread now.
You're
You're moving on up. Moving on up. You have a good weekend?
Oh,
pretty good.
I got this. maybe.
So don't make it.
Okay, good. All right. I'm alive. Let's do it again.
Yeah, we woke up this morning, right? That's a big, big thing.
Trying to do something different.
I know, I already on your line, so
You got
I
it.
signed
Yeah.
down.
In my house. Right, right. Just forethought and education.
Posted.
Sometimes we
Great
have to
day.
educate. That's exactly right. Sometimes you keep talking what we do.
We know exactly what we're doing.
Absolutely.
We just need to pass it on.
100% of none of the time. Huh?
I'm glad they gave us a break.
Oh, did you need a break?
We haven't.
Took a break.
By the looks of that card, it's a good thing.
Huh?
By the looks of that card, it's a good thing.
Why? No. No, I made a few notes though. So maybe I won't ramble and I'll stay on point. I know. You don't believe that, do you?
Sorry.
I'll do my best, I'll put it that way. I'll do my best. Don't, it's not as scary as it looks, okay?
I think we're ready.
Are you ready?
I think so.
All right, why am I here this morning? Well, over the last several weeks, there's been a number of discussions, different formats and stuff about policies and procedures, including the county's policies and procedures. And, you know, last week we had some meetings about the new jail study and all that. And Tom, you said something that resonated with me, as well as Lisa with McGrath, in some of the meetings we've had with her about educating, consistency, and understanding a topic or an issue. And so I think this is my chance. I just wanted to kind of put this out there to, yes, educate the commission, but as well to educate the public, because what I have here, and this is, I'll tell you right now, this is an education session real quick. What you see here are policies and procedures for the sheriff's office. Policies and procedures ranging from general policies to a special response team, the SRT, to drone operations, to how officers drive their patrol cars, to when they have to use their body cams. And yes, we're heavily policy laden, and that even includes inmate policies and procedures. Yes, inmates even have to follow rules when they're incarcerated. And then we have the county policy and procedure manual as well. And the reason I bring that up is because in the manual, what we've started doing is going through and kind of breaking it out by sections, a little more detailed, trying to see if we can't try to find some resolution in working with the commission on policies and procedures. And the reason I say that is, and this is where I got to get to my notes, okay? And because I think it is important that we're at a point where I think it's important to educate the commission and the citizens of our county for the fact that I think sometimes people think there's only one policy manual that exists, when in fact, sheriff's office, we have to operate under a lot of policies and procedures. And I remember when I first took office, I said, the policy manual for the sheriff's office was only about this thick. And I said, by God, that's just too many policies. I'm going to shorten that up. And after I got into it and I went to some leadership trainings and policies and procedures training, I soon figured out that it was going to be just the opposite, that we didn't have enough policies and procedures. And I guess my perspective on policies and procedures isn't to micromanage employees. Rather, it's to protect the county from liability and lawsuits, and to protect the employees from liability and lawsuits. Because in law enforcement, the case law is very clear that employees, if they act outside the scope with intent, that they can personally be held civilly and criminally liable. In other words, if they intentionally operate their patrol car in an unsafe manner, responding on a call and it causes an accident, they can personally be held civilly and criminally liable. In addition to, the county gets exposed to criminal and civil liability. And so that's what my belief is about the policies, and we've really diversified so much that it's not just patrol. Dispatch has policies that are constantly working, they're constantly evolving. And so sometimes I know this creates conflict between the sheriff's office and the county, and it just can't be helped. I think just because the sheriff's office does have policies that are in conflict with the county, but instead of just leaving it as conflict, I would like to see us try to resolve the differences. And the only way we can do that is by sitting down and talking and working through the conflicts and find the resolution, and then address it in both our manuals to say either the county's policy prevails or the sheriff's office policy prevails in a certain topic. Maybe that's one resolution. Because I think the important thing for me as an elected official is, and I think every elected official can say this, is we took an oath. We took an oath to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of Kansas. And in that oath, it said, we will faithfully discharge the duties of our office. And I think I try to stay true to that. But maybe from my perspective, I go about policies a little different. I don't push policies down. I push policies up. In other words, because those that are directly impacted by policy should have some involvement or buy-in to the policy, as well as knowledge. They have so much knowledge. And so we start our policies at the supervisor level and go up, and then they come up to myself and the undersheriff for review and discussion. And if we don't like where a policy's at, we obviously refer to our legal counsel for legal advice, because there's constantly state law that's changing, there's case law that's changing, there's the Supreme Court rulings, through the federal court rulings, through the appellate courts and the Supreme Court, as well as Attorney General opinions. And so those are why you always see working copies going on. And like I said, there are so many specialty areas, and the inmates have their policies that are ever changing as we evolve with technology. And obviously we didn't invent these policies. We through our training and education and through interacting with other agencies that have developed policies, whether we steal from Sedgwick County or Shawnee or Emporia, they borrow from us too, and then you adjust and tweak to have it fit your agency, or you go to a policy training on it when you specialize and break out. But I guess at the end of the day, I guess my thought is you got to be consistent, and that's something Lisa said in the meeting the other day Lisa with McGrath said the other day when we were talking about on the pay side and the scale, said no matter what we do in working, either the commission, elected officials, or appointed department heads, the employees only want consistency. The citizens want consistency. And I do agree with that. I guess at the end of the day, I couldn't agree with it more. I absolutely believe in consistency. And I guess as an elected official, and yeah, my time is coming to an end as sheriff, but I've always tried to be consistent in the enforcement of policies and procedures. I look at policies that if somebody makes a mistake, I don't call it a mistake, I call it a learning lesson. They learned what they did wrong. You give them the corrective action, you educate them, and hope they don't make that mistake again through all this process. And they go on and do better. But when somebody intentionally steps outside the policies or procedures and do it deliberately or intentionally, then I view that as a disregard for their fellow worker, the sheriff's office, the county, and the citizens. And I've always enforced that equally and not hesitated to terminate employees. And I guess that's why we have that statement in our policies and many of our policies, we say we will take disciplinary action up to and including termination. And that's something that I don't take lightly, because I guess as sheriff, it has cost me personal relationships, friendships, longtime friendships, and in some cases, people I view as family, and all my employees I view as family. And so it's something that does strike an accord with me when I have to do that, but I've always done it consistently. And so I just wanted to come down here this morning. I think it's something that's maybe a long time overdue, is trying to have people an understanding that the sheriff's office, we don't always fly by the seat of our pants. We do sometimes. We have to. Like, I was going to give Fred a hard time, like in Lebo the other night, we had a guy on a roof that was high on methamphetamine, and we had to get him off the roof. And so kind of went against policy and procedure in order to get the job done and get him off that roof. And sometimes we have to do that. And so, but I wanted people to understand, and the citizens, and so the only way I knew to do it was to bring these manuals down here and show you guys that I don't take policies and procedures lightly, and I do want us to work. I know a month or so ago, Cody had said that perhaps we could all work together, and we used to work together. There used to be a committee that was comprised of elected officials, appointed officials, and county commissioners in order to meet the open meeting stuff. And we continuously were going through the policy manual to try to update it. And I would ask this commission to give that consideration. I think all this negative has not been good for anybody, including the employees or our citizens. And I would like to see us turn it around and start in a positive direction. And with the salary study, because Lisa said this in the salary study, we can work all day long on fixing what we need to fix and put it in a book and say, this is what needs to be done, but then we got to apply it and we got to do the job. And so I think this would be another step in a very positive direction, is for elected officials and the commission to come together and maybe start, lay our policies out there, so that if I say I'm not following this policy, maybe put a on that, versus just the all appearances would be I'm just being a butthead that's just not gonna conform to a county policy, because I think that's the perception that's out there with the public is, when there's been conflict between myself and the commission, I think people might believe that it's just because I don't want to follow the county's policies, when in fact there may be a legitimate reason. With that, I'll shut up. And so I just felt like it was overdue, and I wanted to come down and do that and say my 2 cents worth.
I think we all realize you have a lot more policies to follow than what we do as commissioners. Yet it'd be great, just like our policy manual's got 150 pages in it.
Right.
You would think that'd be 100 pages too much.
No.
It may not even be enough. And of course, state statutes allow for it. Most of the time when a policy is there's a gray area for an employee, it's 90% of those deals is probably unintentional, not knowing exactly what's in there. And we all have a charge and responsibility of what's in there. I've read most of it over, employees have, and department heads have. But when an issue comes up, you got to go back and reevaluate it and see if it is against board policy or company policy. And you don't know it a lot of times until you reread it. And so there's no question there probably needs to be some coordination between all your policies and this, but I don't think we want to see 1,000 pages here like you have added to ours, and where that compromise should blend and work together. I don't have the total answer for that. We do need to work better together. There's absolutely no question on it. We appreciate what you've got, your responsibilities are. And of course, we got to rely on our county attorney and county council to lead us on updating our policies. We don't know where to make the updates because we don't know all the statutes. There's no question on that. And so we rely on Wade to give us some guidance, because there's gray areas. There isn't any policy out there that's perfect for every situation. Many times there's a gray area. And sometimes you gotta, adjust that gray area take a little bit out of the policy, but more than likely, probably have to add something to the policy. Maybe a paragraph, maybe a sentence, or maybe a complete new category, it takes 2 or 3 pages. So hopefully we can find some common ground.
I know when we write policy, we ask ourselves, you know, do we want to leave gray areas so that it leaves room for employees?
You don't know when you're leaving gray area though, Randy.
Sometimes we do. I mean, sometimes we say, and we have to say in our policy, you shall, you will, or you will not do, you know, this, this, and this. And so we have to, but we also have to, if somebody violates that policy, we have to ask ourselves with common sense, you know, was that a policy that was poorly written? Or was it, you know, clearly written, but the situation called for that, you know, that deputy to turn his body cam off because he needed to have a conversation with somebody and it was justified, or no, he should not have shut it. You know what I'm saying? So you're right though. Sometimes you don't know where those gray areas are. And the only way to do that is through experience and screwing up.
It takes an issue
It
to
does.
bring the gray area out many times.
It does, you're right, and there has to sometimes be an incident, and you just hope that that incident is not big to where it costs the county, and that's something I'm very proud of, isn't because of Randy Rogers, the sheriff, but because of the employees doing a heck of a good job, that this county's not paid out any lawsuits. And you know, it's something to be very proud of, I think, the men and women at the sheriff's office, because they're the ones that do the job. We can write policies all day and Randy Rogers can bark orders, but it's the employees that using their brain and their experience and understanding, because we make them read it. We make them sit down when they get hired and they have to go through and understand, and before they join, say, the SRT team or the drone program, they have to read and understand those policies and have experience before they actually can apply it. So, but I think, how do we resolve it, Don? I think through respect, compromise, understanding, and then sometimes acceptance of a policy that may not set well with us, but it's because that's the law, or because that's what's required of all of us. Just like, you know, I know sometimes I can be difficult. I know that's hard to, I know, Bob, you're shocked. But sometimes, you know, I know that there's policy is clearly defined, like disposal of property. It specifically says, I come to the commission is that authority. The commission, you know, just makes action and does these things. I accept that. I accept that, and I have no problem with that. And then the actual purchase, for example, is the county has a specific policy, and we should follow that policy as an outline or a guidance in making our decisions. But ultimately, I'll buy, you know, what vehicles are necessary to get the job done. And, you know, I remember when the big topic used to be, how many trucks you buying this year compared to cars? How many cars you got? How many trucks you got? Because trucks were new in law enforcement. And so it was a talking point between myself and the commission over trucks and cars. And that no longer, I think, is an issue, because I think there's a better, we've all adjusted to the way business is done. And so I think that's what's required of me as well, is to adjust. And I want to see this salary study succeed. I want us to create a good baseline for our employees. I want us to be able to move forward, and maybe, you know, like Lisa said from McGrath, you know, they didn't get hired though to fix our policies and procedures. They got hired to do a wage study and human resource study. But maybe this is an area that we need to really put as a priority and work together on. And I throw that out there only as a recommendation. Timing obviously makes a difference. And so, but I do think it's a crucial, critical area. And I know I'll never forget a former county attorney. One time we were talking about the law, and he said, I don't know, you guys will never know the laws or understand the laws, because blank, I don't even know all the laws and understand all the laws. And there's some truth to that. And so same thing with policies. I don't know that anybody ever understands all the policies. I don't know how you can, and so,
But 10 people can read a specific policy, and all 10 end up
having a different,
different view.
view of
But
it.
that's almost like the Supreme Court. It seems like their decisions anymore are 5-4, 6-3.
Right.
And at that level, you'd think maybe it ought to be 9-0.
And that's something we have to look at, Don, when we do, like, search and seizure is always a big one for us. When we look at search and seizure and what's legal and what's not legal, at the end of the day, if it's 5-4, 6-3, whatever the decision and the opinion that's written by the courts, that's what we follow, because we don't have a choice. Otherwise, we may be the one making bad case law. And so I know when we got a very competent county attorney that looks at our cases when we submit them to him, and if something wasn't done right, he won't file it. And so, unfortunately, I mean, that could change too. The opinions can change if you get a new Supreme Court. Kansas has kind of gone through that. We have a very different Supreme Court than 10 years ago, when some of the case law we worked from was 10 years ago, and it was a much different Supreme Court. It was a much more conservative, pro-law enforcement friendly court. I don't view the Kansas Supreme Court as very law enforcement friendly right now and not very pro-law enforcement, but that's what we have to work under until different case laws made. So it's an ever-changing, we can write them, rewrite them this year, and next year they're gonna change.
It's a moving target.
It is, and it's hard.
It's like we say in the business world, it's a work in process, and it's an ever-changing target.
That was on my to-do list when I first became sheriff. I was gonna fix the policies and procedures for the sheriff's office, and I was gonna get it done, that first year in office. Here we are,
Still working.
24 years later, and we're still working on them, and they're gonna be working on them for the next 24 years. But anyway, I just want to take the time. I felt like it was overdue to try to create a little education and lay it out there, because I know I don't always do the best job doing that. And so others do a much better job, but I thought it may or may not be helpful. Yes, Mr. County Attorney, sir.
So Randy, before you move on, I guess, I'm gonna give you a different way of looking at it.
Okay.
So, and I work with you and your guys and gals on a regular basis, and Randy has outstanding people working for him. They bust their tails day in and day out to keep. It's understood to me that you have to have separate policies for use of force, race-based policing, an SRT team, operation of the jail, operation of dispatch, pursuit policies and procedures, when you continue a pursuit, when you have to call it off, how does that work? Your drones. And that's no different than for the county attorney's office, a diversion policy, victims' rights, issues when you meet with victims, the different policies that go with the ethical duties and obligations of a prosecutor's office. Wayne, I'll use it as an example here. My guess is, and I've not seen them, but he probably has policies on how someone operates a blade operator, how that position works, how different positions operate with the rest of that cart with other policies and procedures. And I don't think, and this is my impression, and correct me if I'm wrong, that I don't think anybody is of the opinion that they need to invade your internal operating procedure to do what the core function of law enforcement is. That's in the SRT team and how that operates. One, that doesn't need to be broadcast out. You have some sensitive information there that could potentially put your officers at the same thing with a lot of the other, race-based policing. That's just something you have to have. That's race-based policing policies don't impact what goes on in the rest of the county, because what you're doing is different. You impact and have the ability to do what other people, other citizens who aren't certified law enforcement officers cannot do, and that's to take somebody's liberty away from them. And that's an awesome responsibility and an awesome power, similar to what a prosecutor can do, which is to file criminal charges against somebody, and the two of us work hand in hand in that process. So you have to have extra policies. I think where my understanding is I'm not sure concern is the right word, but the differences in brought up the compensation study is how is someone in your department or my department or any other county department, and since Wayne's sitting here, or his department, you know, the core of the county and how it operates is the county policy and procedure manual. And that's what's put online for anybody to look at to see the internal operating procedure of the county. And one of the core functions of that is how the salary structure works, the benefits, vacation, sick time, all of those things. And I think where maybe there's some confusion or misconception is how is that policy manual as it relates to benefits and salary, whether you promote, whether you don't promote, whether somebody jumps up from one step to the next or multiple steps, how is that applied fairly across the board between your department and Wayne's department and my department? And I think maybe that's where there's some difference in opinion. I don't think the other stuff is an issue, because I don't think the commissioners want to have anything to do with.
I would agree.
The use of force. I mean, that's your specialty area, law enforcement, and when you guys are out in the field, you have to, as you said earlier, there's liability that potentially attaches to that, and your policy is your Bible there. But I think moving back to the core policy, you know, salary and benefits and how to navigate around that fairly across the board for all county employees, I think is maybe where
The hang-up is.
the hang-up is. And
I agree.
My question to you and to me and to every other employee of this county, whether you're an elected official or appointed or, you know, somewhere in between, is how do we treat everybody fairly across the board? And what is your responsibility as the sheriff? What is my responsibility? What is each of the commissioners' responsibility? The same as Wayne. And, you know, I've been thinking a lot here lately, and instead of just not saying what's on my mind, I'm gonna maybe take a page out of your book and I'm gonna say what's on my mind.
I think we should.
I think, you know, as a leader in this county, just like you are, just like each of us here are, we each have to step up to the plate and be responsible for our own actions and represent not only the employees within our departments, but the entire county. And I think, you know, that, not to say that anybody's not doing that, but that's where my mind goes. So to maybe have Wayne step up here for a minute, and not to put him on the spot, but, you know, I think the salary and the benefits issue is maybe the core concern across the board, that there's not equal application, and how do we get to that equal application? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, Wayne, but maybe I'm not even thinking about it the right way.
As far as discussion on the salary side of things, or just the
Where-
discussion as
where-
far as our policies?
Well, there's this internal tension, and part of that tension, I think, centers around application of the policy manual. And that's specifically what I'm maybe asking about. And I think right now, since we're here among friends, I think, you know, to maybe from your perspective as a department head, a leader in this county, maybe your perspective, and then that kind of would flesh it out a little bit.
Well, my perspective is the best way is to follow policy, the policy we have in place. I mean, we have the overall county policy, then we have sub-policies that basically are not necessarily printed as we were discussing here.
Right.
Is a sub-policy for us is we have a highway policy manual. And it handles, for when we're talking about wages and such as that, or extra pay, it handles call-outs, it handles, snow and ice activities, it handles basically our mowing policies, when we're to mow back and different things like that, all working underneath basically the county policy. And it's meant to as much as possible. But there are also, even in the county policy and our own policies, our own sub-policies, is there are basically, as a department head, to make judgments within our policies. And because some of it is written as shall, some of it is written as should. Shall and should is two different words, has two different meanings. And so what we try to find there is what we're doing is, as Randy stated, is that when I implement policy, I have to be consistent, no matter what I do. If I'm not consistent, then what I'm going to have is 51 employees on 52, but I'd have 51 employees that's going to remind me every time I deviate from policy. And so those have always been the things I've been trying to do. And so when I bring information up, and when I talk about things that are going on, I give a lot of background information. Just here in my last report, I talked so much about the bridges, I forgot to tell you about my asphalt. But I'm like, that's where I'm at. I try to give you the information. And I think Randy does as well. I think all the department heads do as well. So mine is as I try to implement the policy as fair and consistent as possible. And so where it's going to be for me is communication, is if you're not understanding where I'm coming from, then either one, I need to explain better or I need to explain more. But there is a reason for what I'm asking. And that's where I've always come back, is to say too, that there is a reason, and that's why I'm here. But I'd also say too, is the collective mind of everybody. There's been times where you have pointed out things for me to consider as well. So I take that in respect to say, this is why I wear a tie, is I respect basically the formation of the commission. I respect basically your ideas, because you're bringing ideas from the citizens. I'm bringing ideas of basically what it would take to run the department for the citizens to give the best. And so that's mine, is consistency through the policy. But I'd also say there are loopholes, and it's not meant to be a bad word. It's just meant that there's sometimes policy doesn't cover something, and we have to find what that common ground is for that policy, or how we're going to handle that situation. There's going to be one here we're going to talk about here in a little bit. It's going to be, how do we handle it? Because it's not necessarily covered in the policy. But that's what the commission's allowing us to do, is basically be able to come into those certain circumstances and basically be able to discuss it. So policy's not going to cover everything, but there's going to be decisions that's going to be made that basically allows for us to continue to move forward. That'd be my comment on that way.
Okay. Randy's been jotting down notes, so.
Randy's written down quite a few notes.
More notes than, this may surprise you, Wade, but I actually agree with you. I think as far as the county policy manual, we probably agree on 90% of it at this point. And I think it's important that we resolve the other 10%, and that right now centers around wages. And if we all, I mean, I'm gonna say what I think, obviously, I always, is that I asked for it well over a year and a half ago for a wage study and a clarification to address what I felt was inequality to the wages in the county.
We're headed that way.
We are.
I mean, I know it took a long time to get.
Remember what-
COVID didn't help anything.
I'm gonna throw this out here, Tom, but I remember a year and a half ago when it came up and there was the tension began. I remember the commission making a statement, yep, this is a priority, we want to get on this, and 2 months, we should have a resolution in 2 months. That's just an example. And we are headed in the right direction, I agree with that. But I think, and I think this is gonna get resolved. I feel like in my heart that this wage study is gonna be a tremendous asset to all of us, including the sheriff's office, to resolve what, an outside resource looking in at it, I think was long overdue. And I think it's gonna be a positive for all of us, I really do. And then we have to accept it. Because as an example, something I've been asking for probably well over 10 years or better, is a structure in the wage classification system to address how salaried employees can get pay raises. Because nobody else is really impacted by that except the sheriff's office. The road and bridge is because
We only have 2 salaries.
they only have 2 salary, but it does impact them. How does one of my salaried supervisors that says, you know, for example, the jail administrator, there's nothing in the policy manual that clearly defines how a salaried employee can get a merit raise. There's nothing in there. It's lacking and it's something that needs fixed. And I've been trying to, without being a total jerk, say, fix it. And I threw some stuff out to Lisa that I hope will come back in the recommendations to create some structure that will define that. And I think once you define it, then we just have to man up and say, we're gonna follow it.
I don't think anybody said we weren't.
No, I mean me. I mean me, not you guys, me. And then I have to step up and say, you know what? There's been a fix. They've created consistency. Then I need to apply myself and abide by it. And I'm willing to do that. I'll give you my 2 cents worth, that I'll abide by it. And I guess the thing I ask for the commission in return is always be consistent and always be fair. That's all I can, I think that's just something that I can only for my employees' sake, is sometimes perception is reality. And where there's a perception, it may not in fact be reality, but the employee thinks it is reality. And so I know that's a lot of confusing words. In other words, sometimes your intent isn't what your actions were, but it's perceived that it wasn't fair or consistent. But the time to address it is then, and not wait 6 months or a year, 2 years down the road to bring it back up again. I think that's why I think if there's an issue, we should bring it up at the time and address it and do it maybe one-on-one versus trying to make a public statement or try to, one-up each other. I think there has to be a better effort by everyone, including the elected officials.
You take the wage study though,
We
and hopefully we'll have a lot of good information.
I think we will.
It probably isn't gonna be a perfect fit for every employee. In fact, it may open up some issues that we haven't seen in another area that is gonna upset some other employees.
It will.
I mean, hopefully it will resolve some issues, and I'm sure it will. I got a lot of confidence in the studies taking place. But there's always gonna be the word but in there. It may not solve all things, and it may even create an issue.
I think it is going to
Because that's
create
the way
some
studies
issues,
are.
but I think it's going to resolve more issues than it creates.
I think you're correct there.
I think it will resolve some issues from my perspective. I do. I think, I have a lot of confidence in Lisa, what the work she's doing with McGrath. I think this was probably the best money the county has spent and put that out there. Am I gonna like everything that she puts out there?
Probably not.
Probably not. But that's reality. But I know if she was fair and she looked at it, she says, here's the data. This is the market says this, this, and this is what it says they should be making, then by God, let's leave it there, and that's what they should be making. If they're overpaid, they're overpaid, then we deal with it. If they're underpaid, then I would ask that we deal with that.
I thought that was the agreement we had when we started.
It is, and I'm proud, like I said, I am so happy to see this study.
The only thing I'm disappointed in is it took so long because, I mean.
Me too.
Did the HRs, they included HR and then we had to throw it back out and rebid it and have everybody include HR and then.
And I think that.
COVID and everything like this drug this out. It's
Yeah.
been several things that drag this out way, way too long.
I think it's created some frustration, but I think at the end of the day, what I tell my employees is give it a little time because I think the resolution is gonna be good. I think it's gonna be positive. For those that it has a negative impact on, then it's just gonna, I think the justification's there, the data's there, and were they treated fairly? That's all the heck we can do at the end of the day. And then, you know what? We just gotta step up and say, we've been elected to be leaders of our communities, then we need to act like a leader. And that's all I'm gonna do until I get out of here in January. But I hope that, I think, like I said, I praise you guys. I know, you may be shocked, but I praise you guys that that was the best thing you guys did, and it's taken longer, but I think the end result is gonna be well worth it to what it's gonna be.
I said that, because here for a while, I felt like I was getting a.
No,
Getting tongue lashed.
No. I think it's gonna be a very good positive. I really do.
With all the policies we're talking about for your department,
Yeah.
when I sat down on the Goldberg deal,
Yeah,
probably the time for a new jail is now. I mean, with all policies you're talking about and the laws that you guys have to follow, taking in the inmate, all the other things combined, I don't know.
and you know, Tom, with that, I think, had I done a better job education-wise for you guys 5 years ago or whatever, if I would have done better in presenting it and educating you guys, I think we might even be further along. So I accept responsibility
Yeah.
for that.
You know, I would agree
Versus-
with that statement.
Versus 5 years ago, coming in and saying, we need a new jail.
Yeah.
We need a new jail.
And this would be why. I
And
mean,
this-
after all the things I heard.
Yep. And so I take responsibility for that. I could have done a better job in educating the commission and putting it out there. You're right. And I think that's one thing I would really preach to any new elected officials coming on that's going to replace me or whatever, is do a better job educating. Do a better job.
Opened my eyes, Wednesday.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I still get my eyes
I had
open when I
no
hear it.
idea about half that stuff.
So Wade, that might surprise you that I actually agree with you on that, 100%. I think you're right. I think then that we have to, as elected officials, at some point say, you know what, it's the best tool we got, we're gonna get. It's fair, it's consistent, we're gonna update it. This commission has given their word that they're gonna do a good job. But I think the one other component is once we get the salary study completed and the wage study and this human resource, is let's find a solution on the personnel policies then, to update them to fit that. Because if we don't do a good job updating our personnel policy manual, it's gonna then conflict with some of the other policies. So, and that's work. That is work. I'm not gonna, I know we sat for many, many hours over the years on policies and procedures and it can be frustrating because everybody has an opinion that may not agree with each other. But at the end of the day, then I think the best thing we've all always done, and I agree with you, Don, is turn back to our legal counsel to say, give us the legal solution and then give us the application solution. And then we live with it. we live with it. So, anyway,
Thanks, Randy.
I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, which I probably did.
We said 10 minutes. It's been 40.
Well, 45, y'all know better, my gosh, but anyway, if any of you ever want to know about any of the specialty areas or some of the policies, feel free to come down and we'll hook you up with the people that help write these and we review them and we can perhaps clarify if there's ever an issue. So,
I'm not law enforcement, so it doesn't, you have your policies.
we do. We do. So, all right.
Thank you.
See you later. So.
Are you guys just sitting in or do you need
But you've
something?
got your asphalt.
Wayne
I forgot my,
Wayne forgot his ass.
you forgot his asphalt.
Well, Heidi's sticking around, I'm assuming for something else.
I signed the wrong line on
Oh.
that one.
Oh, okay.
Well, Wade and I visited just out in the hallway too. Wade has request for executive session.
Oh, hold on.
But
Wait, Tom, that needs to be signed. When it says printed, she typed your name in. So sign that.
Sign it instead of print it,
Yeah,
but it says print.
well, it says below it, and she's already typed your name where it says print. See the S off to the left? That means signature.
There.
Okay, so she's gonna go get another one here.
So,
Get it, Heidi.
so I'm gonna jump in because Peter, when we're signing stuff and we need to clarify so the people watching know what's being signed, so they don't just, I mean, if I'm watching and we're talking about signing something, I just make sure they know what's being signed. Because I wasn't here, I don't even know what it
But
is.
it's back to the zoning deal,
Okay,
so
and I think that,
we had,
Sign it this
a
time.
couple of them got signed wrong, so we redid the paperwork. Sent it back around.
Well, when that first one came around and I saw that, I went, I think that's wrong.
but I think that just needed to be
Okay,
clarified so people know that that's.
that's all it is.
Well, and this, once again, this gave me an opportunity to give you some information on the asphalt. I was just contacted last week, so the other portion of the asphalt, which would be the 2 intersections and the asphalt around the city. The asphalt around the city will start asphalt on the ground on Thursday. They'll actually start milling on Wednesday. So this would be, yes, sir,
That's what.
13th school and 16th road, what they call it. Lynch Road.
That's why I seen your machine in town this morning.
So they're gonna be milling, doing the headers and then the mill out for actually the damaged areas. And that's one of the things I wanted to visit with you about, is I know we're gonna have a change order on that one because there's more damaged areas than what was actually accounted for when we did the plans. And so we're gonna have some damaged areas right there at Links and 13th. That is part of the heavy truck traffic turning. You can actually see the asphalt, the subgrade starting to fill in that area. So we're gonna mill a portion of that out and then put some fabric over it and then cover it with thicker asphalt at that point. There's also too on this one, it's not necessarily a policy, but it's a recognition of the fact that we're around the city. I know it's county, but we are in this or near the city limits. And so these homes are what I would consider to be more residential than county. They're county too. But we're coming back a little bit on the drives, about 2 foot, more than what we normally do. We're also getting the turnouts on the mailboxes. You won't see that necessarily like on Trefoil or Shetland and such as that when we're out on those roads, but you will see it here on this particular one. So there's just a little bit more asphalt. We're trying to keep in mind, I'm not wanting to get that gravel brought up on the new asphalt, the main line, and that's the reason I'm coming out just a little bit more. But the bigger one is to discuss is the change order, potential change order for fabric, milling, and additional asphalt that we're gonna have due to structure failure of the pavement. But that's starting this Wednesday, so they'll be laying asphalt Thursday, Friday, and then possibly fixing it or finishing it up Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday of next week. And then after that, they'll start on the intersections. He's to contact the co-op a day before. And so we should see that within the next 2 weeks that they'll be working on the intersection. The other one that's, I was just called out, is our employee, our summertime employee. That would be like 560 hours, is what we had by motion, is we're asking is, additional 40 more hours approximately right now at this point. Is that summertime employee is what I would have, is 30 hours this week, and then after that, they go to school. So I'm just letting you know on that one, unless you object to it, I'd like to go ahead and extend his hours for this week. And I don't have the form or anything in that nature, but I just wanted to give you a heads up, and I'll be glad to get the form if there is a form. But more than anything else, to let Denise know that we're extending his hours.
We've extended a couple last year, but I'm not sure whether we signed a form or not.
Yeah,
I think it might have been just documented in the minutes.
putting it out there. Okay.
We extended 2 or 3 last year.
Yeah, we did too.
So that's all I have. Denise, unless you have direction on that, is there a form or, okay. That's it.
Good.
Then I think Wade has something.
Am I up?
What is it? In East County, I mean, do you want to do roundtable or just, do you need to do something?
Well, we can start there. And
When it gets to you, okay.
Angie wanted me to let you know that last week there was a question about whether the budget should have been signed. It will not be signed until next week after the budget hearing.
Okay. That it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Don't forget to vote.
so I can get Wayne out of here, I'm gonna request a motion for the commission to recess into executive session for discussion of personnel matters involving non-elected personnel under the non-elected personnel provision of the Kansas Open Meetings Act. That's KSA 754319B1. And that's to discuss HIPAA-related issues regarding non-elected personnel. Myself, the 3 commissioners that are here, Wayne, and Denise.
Right on.
15 minutes.
Need a motion to
So
go
I
that
will
way?
make that motion so we can get Wayne out here.
Oh, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0. We'll go in at 10:54. Right at 10:15, is that right?
Yeah.
Or 11:09, excuse
You're a popular man, is it?
Okay.
She said no, she wasn't. After I explained to her, one check.
Cheap, save money.
You like Lisa.
Yeah.
You do, you look nice today, young lady. You look very nice. We should. Have a little bit. Our board of county commissioners. We should show. we should address that.
Did they go for 10 minutes, Donna?
I
15?
was confused
So,
on the landlocked issue.
I'll start my watch, but I want to yap at it for just a second.
You want to talk to them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and so I guess I didn't understand the landlocked thing at first, that issue. That landlocked issue, I didn't really understand it until you explained it, and when you explained it, well, that makes sense. Right. See, I was. Right. Here like that, it just shrunk it down here, the probably best thing we ever did. But the better thing was, is that had the county come in, the new 10 years old, I was gonna have to have cedar trees now, and all that. It's like that's crazy, man. Greg Murray. Greg Farms, all this farm ground here, around the goods. And so, I thought Greg Murray has great, you know, his head goes all the way through right now. Like when I put it out, his head goes, open that up. He opens that out, bring out the back here. You'll let me use this as an entrance. And I'll just go like this, and my place. And I'll open this up. Solution to me, you know, that's a good one. And all the dirt, so it worked out for everyone. It really did. And so that was probably the best piece of advice I got in buying that. Instead of getting landlocked and then having to fight back stuff, we actually got with people that were landlocked and disputes between, you know what I mean? You can go in, but you're not going in that way. Right, and then it's like, well, we can go in that way for 50 years, you know, like, gosh, now you're telling us we can't go, and they put a padlock and a table across. And unfortunately, when you can't resolve it and get along and resolve your situation, you say, right, right. It's not addressed in the zoning side of things, it has actually just like all the others. I don't think we do because we do not. That are not good. Environmentally, cosmetically. Good. Right. Cut out the rules. We could. So when the 3 mile, but that irritation, 3 mile radius, potentially if they choose. was hard work. It was hard work. No, it's just, my understanding, I don't know it 100%. It's a buddy hospital, the board is one that actually paid. And so, that's what the dispute came, and that we got there. And the family was living, members of the family were living out there and trying to keep it up. And they kept getting behind, and that's the position on ownership. There was a big struggle, you know, and basically they took it out. Suppose that's. She was upset about obviously the situation too. And that was what she was very that. But, you know, they're not really exactly. They don't want to do anything in their house. Right? And so it's like, I'm not doing it. That's not fair to us. It works hard and can't afford a lot of, you know, what they deserve adequate housing. You know, it might be adequate, but it's got to be safe. Safe for something that children, you know, and little children, there's electrical, there's a problem, water, safe water, you know, sewer, sewage. And so I think it's, you know, that drives us crazy. We see some of these houses, we know, and then we end up getting DCF calls on it. Because the people calling in is not being good children. So DCF shows up and says, hey, will you go with us? Sure, and we get there and it's nasty. You know, electric outlets sticking out, you know, bare wires, you know, water, the cow, it's just nasty. But, you know, it's one of the things. That area, I'm going to do something in that area. You know what I mean? That's what we're If so, then we need to come up with a solution now. It's obviously, it's, people want these signs for the rooms, whatever. Okay. Right. Outside the house. That's fun. You know, that's usually what happens. That's how somebody usually gets in trouble is, they'll, well, it's been a couple weeks. There'll be this flashing yellow light out, you know, and it's in their window. Like, oh, it's like one of those barricade lights. We had a lot of those stolen once upon a time, years ago. When they were doing construction on the bridge, on the bridge on the blacktops, and they put up the barricades, yellow flashing lights, you know, and they stole them. And they weren't smart enough to, they figured out how to shut them off.
Yeah.
And then they took them, well, then they turned them, you know, a couple weeks later, they're having some party or something, and they put them out, and they turned them on, and they flash, and, you know, and it happened to be at the party, a cop's kid who had a conscience, and went back and said, you figure it out, right? They're shut off, stroke, that's something that, you know, they're saying, they took them, well, some county employees with their work. And so I think it later a week or two, you can see the yellow flashing lights, you know, for a mile away, you can see them. I think they were using them to identify what a party was. And they put these yellow flashing lights out, flashing everywhere, you know, and so we actually got them, so. Well, you don't always catch the smart criminals, but you catch dumb ones. And kids don't realize, like, when they pull that, they steal that stop sign, that it could cause an accident. And people die, and they can be held liable for it. You know, it's determined they just stole the stop sign, being messy. Kids don't think those things through. You know, exactly, or no passing sign. That's crucial, it's a safety sign. Safety signs are important, and so they don't realize. Right. So we gotta catch them, play hard. That is one of the, that is a tough one to solve, because it's a stupid mistake, or somebody telling somebody, or having it. You know, I mean, the county has done a very good job at marking down. The code, those ID code numbers, I think the county's done as much as you can do.
I'm sorry?
It's cold down here.
It's cool, it's cool.
It is. Your chambers upstairs that we're using for the election, advanced voting right now, it's warm in there.
It's only 75 today outside.
Was he done with his roundtable, you suppose?
Russell wants to talk to you guys.
I don't know. I have nothing.
I don't have anything, Bob. I don't know, Russell, he's got.
Russell, you got something?
I was just gonna touch base with you on we've been reviewing proposals from firms to help administer the CRF funds. And, they've been ranging from $45,000 to $80,000. And I had a follow-up conversation with a local CPA. And when Angie talked to her originally, she said she wasn't interested. But I talked with her some more the other day, and she said, well, maybe it didn't sound like as big a deal as what it originally sounded. And so the committee's gonna do most of the work. But she said she would be willing to basically reconcile and review the books and at just the normal hourly rate. And she couldn't imagine that it would be that many hours. And so I was one direction from the commission on, I think that's the way we should go. I guess you'd say kind of do it in-house, but with her reviewing the books. And I've talked to Angie and Karen, and I believe they're in agreement that we're looking at one check in. There may be another one later on, but probably at the most one or two, at the very most 3 checks in, possibly just one. And 50 to 100 checks out. So it's not like we're gonna be writing thousands of checks, I don't think. So I think my recommendation is gonna be to do it in-house with the local CPA's review. If the commission's good with that, or you want to review the proposals we have from the CPA firms, and my thought is, Tomorrow we're having our first committee task force meeting at 3. And so, I'll present that information to them and maybe have a recommendation from them to the commission to decide. But I just wanted to give you an update on where we were on that and what I'm thinking, and see if the commission has any counter thoughts. Or
What did you say possibly the cost for that would be?
to go out and have a firm do it?
No, just to, like if we hired a CPA, just.
Around $125 an hour for her to review the books
We're looking.
on a couple hundred transactions.
So we're looking at less than 10,000.
Oh.
Well, I mean, I think if we have that right, you don't have to advertise correctly for something like that, right?
Professional services, but what I would say is you at least need to have something in writing that says here's what the terms and parameters of the agreement between county and CPA are, because you may get somewhere further down the road and what you thought was the agreement maybe has some sort of nuance to it that you didn't think about. So everything needs to be in writing up front, so everybody knows what the expectations are from both sides, what the cost is. If it goes over a certain, I know right now it's a couple hundred transactions to review, but let's say for instance, it ends up being closer to 500, then are the figures still the same? Or if they are, then that's fine. If they're not, then there's kind of an escalating hourly rate based on however many are reviewed. And those are the kind of contingencies you need to have built in up front, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's good to, if we can get a CPA to do it. It takes, people seem to have a lot of questions. It takes it off that we really have nothing to do with it. It's an outside firm is actually verifying that it is correct.
Right, and basically she'd just be reconciling it, making sure all our ones and threes added up to 4. I mean, but I don't disagree with it at all. I mean, I think, so my thought is, we meet with the committee tomorrow, and I'll have a lot of stuff to share with them. And then, as we get our applications in, we'll have a better idea of how many transactions we think there might be after the committee reviews everything. And then that'll give us a better idea to base our, our simple agreement on with the local CPA.
And part of it too is one of the key components of this funding that's going to be dispersed is proper accounting by the applicants to provide those records. And if the CPA has to go back and on paper it says $100, but they have to go back and track down through whoever the applicant was what that ties to, then that may mean more work on their end instead, in addition to just reconciling documents, or someone else will have to do that. So there's a bunch of different layers that are possible, but that's why getting the information up front through that committee and then having it filtered through, and hopefully all those documents are available and presented at the time it makes it to the CPA. But at the same time, you may not know what the CPA needs until they actually review it.
And Wade and I have been talking, and he's working on I don't know what the right term would be, disclaimer or whatever, or agreement that any applicant that receives money will require them to sign it, so they have to spend it properly within the guidelines, and if they don't, then they'll be subject to have to return that money.
And you can write up the one with the CPA too then, I mean, because we've got some time before the CPA will be needed, I'm assuming, so.
And they may have a standard agreement that can be reviewed and then maybe modified to meet the specific needs of this particular endeavor.
We just get one from them, if that's what they have, and I'll look it over and make sure we're all good soon.
I think it'd be a lot better if we can retain somebody for $125 an hour, even $150. That's better than the figures we were talking about here a couple weeks ago at $40,000 or $50,000. To me,
a range of 40 to 80 are the proposals we've gotten, and like and the kicker on those is most of those are when I've explained what we've already done and the committee we formed and the process we've already started. More than one of them said, "Oh, well, you've already done half of it or 3/4 of it," and so, but they didn't want to reduce their fees. And so why pay them for something that we're already doing?
Yeah, I get it, yeah, sounds good to me.
And you mentioned the other day, you're gonna set these applicants on and assign them some type of a numbering system for priority.
That'll be my recommendation to the committee.
Are you putting that system together where the committee would have a guideline to work with? Or is that gonna be the committee putting that together?
I'll make recommendations to the committee.
I think
I'll make recommendations to the committee and then see what we come up with as a group.
What's the final date for applications to come in?
The sooner the better.
I figured that would be your answer, but I asked for a date.
So
on the calendar, right?
So according to the federal guidance, the way I understand it, they could wait until December to make an
They
application.
don't want that.
But we may not have we may have spent the money already. So, for those listening in video and the small businesses that may or may not have gotten the information already through the city or through Facebook or through the newspaper, the sooner you apply, the better chance you have of the money not running out. And originally, a lot of us thought, oh man, are we going to be able to spend $1.76 million between now and December? Of the initial things that we have already gotten or been told we're going to get applications way more than $1.76 million. And so providing that the stuff that those applicants want is available to be bought and delivered by December, we're gonna spend all the money. Unless, caveat is, everybody and their brother is gonna want, motion activated bathroom faucets and flushers. How fast is that stuff gonna fly off the shelves and what's the availability gonna be? Who knows? And that's just one example of, a list of 100 different things that everybody across the nation is probably gonna be wanting to spend this money on.
And Russell, for these meetings, the committee meetings that are gonna be taking place, how is the general public put on notice to know when those meetings are gonna take place in case they wanna be, attend and watch the process instead of just hear the end result or the recommendation? Because I think that's especially important too.
I guess that's what you tell me.
I don't know. Is there gonna be guidance, or gonna be someone in charge of this, or is it just everybody's gonna meet all once we have these ideas? How, is it gonna be?
Well, my intent is to explain the stuff to them tomorrow and then ask the committee if they want to elect a chairperson or if they just want me to lead the committee. And that was my intent tomorrow.
So for tomorrow's purposes, there are no applications being considered. It's kind of to get the framework of how the committee is going to operate and then set another date, because I think that's important for the public to know kind of what the structure is. And there will need to be notice to the community somehow so that they can attend those meetings.
Yeah, they could put it in the paper, even flyers to local businesses at least, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we'll decide tomorrow is a meeting schedule. And I know, or my understanding from talking to at least some of the committee members is they're open to do some of it just via email, to send them stuff for them to review and not, so that they don't necessarily, for social distancing purposes and travel purposes and time purposes, to get stuff done faster. Is, as we get information, whether it's a packet of applications that send out to them to review, and then maybe just to come together and make decisions.
Will
In person, more in person.
committee be under the same guidelines we are? As far as open meetings, quorums and that stuff, the committee.
They are.
Same guideline?
Wait, correct me if I'm wrong, but they aren't making decisions. You guys are gonna make the decisions. All they're doing is forming a recommendation for you.
But I think that although the decision, the recommendation comes to the board, to me, they're a long arm or an extension of the commission. So when they're a long arm or extension of the commission, that discussion on how money is to be spent is one of the most crucial components of, because you can't just, let's say I'm on the committee and I come in and my recommendation is business X be awarded $100,000. Okay, well, if that's your recommendation, then, well, how did you come to that decision? To me is the crucial. And in another position I had, at one point in time, there was a utility rate committee. That utility rate committee met, and when they met, they discussed whatever the utility rates were, and then they come to before the governing body, and they make the recommendation for what the utility rate, whether it should go up. Typically, I guess it would go up. How did they come to that decision? And that's what the public wants to know. How did they come to that decision? Not what the ultimate conclusion is, because that you just get to make that decision, and where's the discussion? So I think you got to be very careful, in my opinion, because we're dealing with.
If we're discussing personnel, we're discussing individuals or businesses. They are committee is discussing that, is that gonna be an open session?
Or I'll have to, I mean,
When they're discussing,
I thought they were,
Financials of private business.
right, but I mean, when it comes out to finally, yes, who's getting it, that's probably open, but how you guys, how they find it and discuss it, that might be executive session stuff.
something of it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it looks like, what's gonna be provided, and, there's a line, for sure.
After this meeting, tomorrow, some of those members might say, no, find someone else.
Possible. So my other question then will be, what you can maybe research this too is, as far as the committee's concerned, do they have to, during a committee meeting, do they have to allow public comment? That could be a nice. Or is it just for the public to observe? But I know, I mean, we have lots of other committee meetings and we don't advertise them. I know this is a little different deal, this is a different animal. And I'm not saying we shouldn't advertise them, I'm just, when you're researching, that's how easy, so. If it's just for the public to observe, or is it to let everybody and their brother come to public for 5 minutes?
My initial gut reaction would be the committee would discuss, and then as long as there was the opportunity to review or observe what happened, the ultimate decision is going to be made at this level, and that would be where the public would come and have the opportunity to comment or make, be a part of that discussion, because there's no final decision being made until you get to this level, because the commissioners are the ones that have to make that decision. And to me, that's where that discussion, whether yea or nay or something in between, should take place.
Will you be attending this first session? Possible.
Yeah, I'll make every effort.
If possible, you might be able to give some guidelines. I know you're busy.
But I'll make an effort to be there if I can.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
This meeting tomorrow, be during daytime or be a meeting?
3 o'clock.
3 o'clock? Will that work with most of those committee people? I know some of them were.
They reply, the vast majority replied via email, yes, that worked. We got a name from each commission district and a name from each city and economic development and the chamber. I don't think I'm leaving anybody out. So we'll see who shows up, and like Bob said, they have to stay after I lay a couple of pieces of paper in front of them.
I know the two I talked to seem very enthused about being involved in it, so.
Okay.
Good luck.
All right. Thanks.
You have anything else for roundtable, Wade?
Yeah. So I'll come up here for this. So one of the things that I had mentioned before, and just to, I guess, keep the dialogue and discussion going, is some of the modifications, and it's probably right, even considering the sheriff brought up the policy and modifications to the policy. So in our purchasing policy, per request several months ago, the commission asked for me to put together a proposed addition or modification in reference to a vendor gift policy. And I think you each have had that for some time, and maybe the better thing to do would be to wait until Fred is back, but I at least want to keep it on your radar so we get these changes made. We also have the CCTV policy, which I think needs to kind of start to ramp up and at least get put in place so that there, and it may be a work in progress, it may be fluid, there may be things that need to be changed in the CCT policy. But I'll start out with the vendor gift policy. And the vendor gift policy is highly summarized county policy. Prohibits employees from soliciting or accepting gifts from vendors. It's county's expectation that gifts or gratuities not be offered or sent to any employee of the county. Employees may not solicit or accept any gifts from vendors regardless of the value except as set forth in this policy. Even gifts of nominal value may be used to influence or potentially influence employees in the conduct of their duties and responsibilities. County also recognizes that it is customary for some vendors to occasionally give small gifts to accompany purchase orders without solicitation from an employee. Accordingly, county and its employees must be very careful when it comes to accepting gifts. Gift includes anything of value an employee receives for which the employee has not paid or performed services. Gifts include, but are not limited to, cash equivalents such as gift cards or promotional items. A vendor means a company, including an employee, agent, or representative of a company that currently supplies or has the potential to supply products or services to the county or is otherwise in a position to do business with the county. Promotional items means advertising or promotional items of nominal value less than $25, such as coffee cups, calendars, and those items may be accepted provided that such items are widely distributed to others under essentially the same business relationship with vendor. And not to read the rest of it, but it talks about when an employee receives those items, highly summarized, they are to return the items over to, and one of the blanks I have is who do they turn it over to, because originally the idea was those items would be maintained and later distributed by the wellness committee as a prize or giveaway during the county-sponsored wellness event. So I'm still under the same understanding that that was what the goal and idea would be. So I just want you to consider that. If you need me to provide you the copy of what I have, what I put together, I can do that. But I think now is the time while we're working on other things, and not that we need to add to our policy manual, but we do need to add some clarification to certain sections. That was one of the ones that got brought to my attention. And then the CCTV policy is a whole new addition to the policy manual, which I think it's about 17 pages or something like that. There'll need to be a section and placement that will have to be decided where it's going to go in the policy manual. So that's what I have there. So I'm going to switch gears just a little bit, and similar to what I did last week. Last week I talked about the Socrates triple filter test, which I think was a very useful example of what each and every one of us should do. And talking about leadership, I'm gonna probably have two quotes. And I'm a quote guy, if people didn't know. And this particular quote is from Edgar Hurrier Jr. from a book entitled 19 Stars, A Study in Military Character and Leadership from 1971. And my family has a military background. I studied the military quite a bit and studied leadership, so that's what this is. No strong man is without weakness, and no weak man without strength. But a man of high character can be depended upon at all times. If a follower can say of his leader, I can depend on him, not necessarily always be right, but to do his best and what he considers to be right. I know his word is good. I can depend on him to be honorable in his dealings with me. I can depend on his moderation, his temperance, his fairness, his judgment. I trust him. I admire him. That is the type of leader men have confidence in, and who men will die for. Decisions are not easy in time of war, and the follower must believe in a decision that means life and death. Now, that's an extreme example, but the point is, all those characteristics of a leader, each and every one of us who are in leadership positions, we need to take the time to reflect and make sure that the people who follow us, that they can see those characteristics in each and every one of us. That to be honorable, dependable, whose word is good, who they can depend on us in moderation, and temperance, and fairness, and judgment, and that we're admired. That's key. So as a leader in this county, that's something I strive for. And lastly, I have with me something that was my father's. It was in his office, something that he instilled in me, and it's something about even beyond being a leader as I described, but as you reflect internally, when you look in the mirror and you think about the thoughts that are in your mind, this is it's called The Light of Integrity, and it's by a Greek poet, philosopher, Heraclitus. The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts. Think only on those things that are in line with your principles and can bear the full light of day. The content of your character is your choice. Day by day, what you choose, what you think, and what you do is who you become. Your integrity is your destiny. It is the light that guides your way. So make sure your thoughts, and this is for me too, when I look in the mirror every day, I want to make sure my mind has these principles in mind, because it's my choice. And just like it is each and every one of us. So that's all I have for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Randy, did you have something else?
No, I need to talk to Wade about a local thing.
So we've already down to me. I agree with Rhonda that I've done this in my own business. I procrastinated on a couple of applicants and lost them to another company and regretted it. There are a couple of good applicants. I don't know if you guys have looked them over. Personally, I'd like to interview one or two of them. I was kind of wanting to wait until we get the district filled, but again, if we procrastinate, we're liable to lose some.
And I would say again, I am not willing to go down the same road we've been down for the last 14 years. I still think there's other avenues we need to be searching out instead of just hiring people and throwing them into positions. So, yeah, and I agree, we probably should wait. I don't like the idea that, some people are stuck here, other people are stuck with people that you have done. Yeah, I'm not anxious to do it. At present time, I'd say no.
I know we've talked about quite a bit here since we have not had an economic director. And there are a couple of candidates I think's got some value that could bring to the table. And it is a position that and like I mentioned in the form, it's hard to evaluate exactly what that person has accomplished over time. And hopefully you can evaluate that, whether it be a plus or minus. And I know we talked about waiting till we had our 5th commissioner on board. As far as I know, Fred is going to be here in the near future. I'm not sure whether he's here next week or not, but I don't think there'd be any problem with visiting with these two. And if we feel comfortable with them, we can move ahead. If not, we move on down the road until we have a better applicant. But there are a couple of applicants that's got some value, it appears.
And that's the way I see it as well. And there's only 3 of us here this week, so maybe it's a discussion that we had to bring up next week when we have Fred here.
Fred, see what Fred's thoughts are.
Again, I go back to, I procrastinated several times personally and lost somebody to another company that, in the end, I wish I would have had him, so. Another week, food for thought. Other than that, I have nothing. Don has nothing.
We've got these here to finish up.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm about done with it. Here's basically the credit card from our sheriff's department.
Oh,
Everything appears to be great. You know, I'm basically looking at everything's $100 or greater. So, and there's only 10 or 12 of them that's above $100 at the time.
You know, Bob, I think, as far as the economic development director deal, you mentioned down the same path as the last 14 years. I think with this COVID deal, we might be in a little more unique position now with some,
Well, I look at these two, talk about these 2 applicants, there's other applicants out there, you know, Ron said some withdrew, but we still have others. You know, let's take a look at all of them and see which one's going to, it's not these 2 because this is the 2 that they said, last 2 we have.
Guess you got some others coming in besides these.
Well, we've had others come in.
Yeah, those other 5 that came in, to be honest with you, I've never seen. My thought on those other 5, and you can't always tell from a resume or an application, but there's 2 here that exceed what those other 5 were.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to evaluate just looking at papers too.
You went through most of these, didn't you, Don?
I'm sorry?
You went through these pretty fine, didn't you?
I identified everything was $100 or greater, Bob, and I didn't see anything that I thought was outside. A lot of it had to do with the OK Kids that's been canceled. So, there was $1,000 on that for Hoover's Fifth Earthquake, and there was 2 others at $125. And then there was 4 or 5 items for some computer stuff, toner from Amazon. And that took care of about all of them, it was above 100. I'm just gonna leave mine here, because I've already looked at these.
Yeah, I have to. Is that it?
you just leave those here, then they're open.
Yeah, let's have to think about that as soon as that does.
Okay,
I don't leave everything here
Yeah, she picks everything out in boxes, just to,
and take it to the,
Let me clear this out.
I'll still take mine with me.
if there's another meeting in her now.
I'll just take mine with me.
Leaving personal information. probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it, I guess we're here at 11:46.
Bam.